Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes, and welcome back to the YoVideogames podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
And once again, thank you to all our generous patrons who've kept us going for over 450 episodes.
Yeah, if you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Dude of the week is Nayrus. Nayrus is a very cool name. It is also a real name, so I'm not going to say your last name on air, but
what a great name. What a great origin for your name.
Homer called him the old man of the sea. It's one of the gods of the sea for everybody at home.
With great wisdom and stuff. And
that is an excellent name.
Yeah, and again, my name's all churchy and lame. You know, it means a gift from God. I was named after a former tax collector who wants to be named after that. Thanks, Mom. Anyways,
I'm Mighty Warrior. Andrew's Mighty Warrior, but every Andrew I know does not really. Well, one of them lives up to it and had a whole secret family and everything. So I guess mine's killing it. My name's great. Speaking of great names, let's talk. Well, should we go on a high note first?
Sure, why not?
Sony fumbled at the 5-yard line. They Concord did terrible. Astro Bot, great, fantastic. I am like 80% through. I should have beaten it by now, but I haven't. I'm like 80% through. I'm getting 100% on every. It's of course you have. It's a platform. You beat it 6 hours. It's a 15-hour game. You beat it in 5 hours.
Oh no, I because I was going for a near 100% run. So it took me like 16, 17 hours.
That's what I'm doing. I'm doing 100% run, and I'm like 80% in now.
There were like I have 10 puzzle pieces left. There were literally 10. I got to the end. I'm missing 10 because at the end I was like, all right, I'm just gonna beat the game. I'm just gonna beat it. Like there's a few near the end. I got to just go puzzle piece wise. I know where they are too. It's usually at the beginning of the level when you're flying in and you miss one.
Okay, I haven't missed any of those yet, purely by accident. This is my only real if I had a complaint about the game. It's the only game I've had so far that actually makes use of all the features of the haptic feedback and all that stuff. But it seems for whatever reason to track my control weird. And so the aiming around like the flashlight moment where you got to aim a flashlight at some like ghosts or stuff, like it doesn't track my not Wiimote, my P-mote. It doesn't track that very well. And so
I don't know what the reset is, because if you're holding it here, but it's kind of aiming to the left or right, and I don't know how to reset. I don't know what is the center button on the thing. I actually don't know.
So I tried pausing it, or what I'll do is I'll go out. I won't end the game. I'll just hit the PlayStation button and then re-enter the game, and that resets where it is in the pause screen. And so I don't know if that's it. The other thing is this burns through controller life.
Oh, absolutely.
If I didn't have 2 controllers, I would have to stop every hour. I just hot swap everything. And every time I hot swap, it gets all messed up too. So that's really my only complaint. But one thing that I know for certain deep in my bones is Sony's not going to take the right lessons from this. They're not going to see oh, look at the fun. Look at the PlayStation 5 Pro announcement. They're pushing for all the things that nobody cares about. And there's a couple people that care about it. Jeff Keighley really cares that there's going to be AI. I don't want to jump into the negatives yet. So we'll talk. Just remind me to talk about how they expose the AI grift in their own marketing language.
Oh, they totally did.
Yeah, they used last year's marketing language to describe this year's marketing buzzword.
The thing is, I love Astrobot. I will say this one thing though, and someone pointed it out where it's everyone should copy what Astrobot's doing for their gaming, and a lot of people are do you know how many people would get laid off if you did that? Because the idea of okay, well, this was 60 people in 3 years, and so we should just cut every studio down to 60, 100 people. That would lay off the majority of the game industry. So that's a problem. But I think it's less about, okay, why did it only took these many people this long? Number one, this game takes an obscene amount of assets, reuse, animations, and textures and assets and everything from the Astro's Playroom.
Yeah.
And heck, even a little, even Astro's, even the Rescue Mission VR game, like a lot of this game is reused assets, which I think is fine. I
And
don't have a
smart.
problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with this. But let's say you wanted, to make a game like this, but you had a studio with a lot more people. What could you do? Well, they could make, if you were going full original assets all the time. This is why you could keep tons and tons of people at these game studios if they made games in the similar vein to Astrobot. This is what you keep them around for. This is why Call of Duty, you know,
Employs so many people.
so many people, and in like there's a Call of Duty every year because they have 10 studios that, and then there's a lead studio that shuffles every 3 years. They're on 3-year cycles. And the Call of Duty games don't actually share a ton of assets. People think, oh, it's just the same thing. No, they are not. No, they are not. And then they'll have like huge leaps where, like, when you got to the Modern Warfare one remake, the 2019 remake, that was like,
Yeah.
nothing about like the CODs before that translated at all. Like, it was practically a whole new engine at that point. I think that's
Yeah.
when they finally left the Quake 3 engine.
Was
But
it
like,
really running on Quake 3?
it was running on Quake 3 all the way up until at least Blops 3 or Blop 6, like heavily modified.
They are
Like
so talented.
the base code for Call of Duty was still on Quake 3 all the way till then.
That's
So
real talented developers then
yeah,
is all.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of like Mortal Kombat. I'm sorry, excuse me. NRS, until Mortal Kombat 1 last year, was doing Unreal 3. They did Unreal 3 all the way through MK11. It was Unreal 3 all the way through. Very, very heavily modified, obviously.
And also probably much cheaper to do it that way, I guess.
Well, I mean, kind of became a problem because it got to the point where, like, they had so much customization that they'd personally done that hiring people became an issue. Like, at this
Oh,
point, it's like, come in, like, what do you know? I know Unreal. I'm like, do you know Unreal 3? Do you know our very, very custom version? I'm like, no. so that eventually you got so proprietary, so unique that it became like you can't hire anyone because it's like it's such a highly customized older engine.
I yeah, I didn't really think about how much customization happens, but this is another argument for stability in a company, like development of a team development, or talent development is the
Right.
word I'm
Yeah.
looking for.
Yeah.
um how do you not I think it's one of the lesson that should be got from that is talent development, but instead the lesson that'll be got from that is that we should always be using the newest thing, or we shouldn't customize as much. Like, I'm trying to think of, like, what's the worst lesson they could learn, and that'll be the lesson that publishers learn.
The worst lesson they're going to learn from Astrobot is that they don't need to employ so many people. And if people aren't making hit games in 3 years, they should just get fired.
Yeah, God,
That's the
that's
lesson they're
gonna
going
be
to
what
take.
they're gonna. Yeah,
That's the lesson. Oh, 60 people made this in 3 years, so you can make a really good game in 3 years. Why isn't everyone else on this ball? We should cull everything down to just like, the 60 most important people, and then give them give them a 3-year mandate, and we're going to be back, and it'll be great because then we're gonna cut down development time. We're gonna have more product out faster, and we're gonna pay less people. It's gonna be great. Astrobot is the future. It really is the future, Andrew. It's the future everyone wanted.
God, that's so sad because I can see it. Like, I mean, yeah, Kotick can't be the villain anymore, but I could see Kotick's face, his mouth making those noises.
Bro, did you see that Worm was he was at like opening game day for
Yeah,
some
with
sport
Musk.
thing? He's hanging out with Bobby Connor. Like, what? I was like,
He's not
can you,
helping his whole
can you
Epstein thing.
imagine? It's just sitting there, just kind of like, hey, bro, let's go to opening game with me, Bobby Kotick.
But yeah, I'm always sort of surprised when I mean, anybody watches tennis, but like, w- what? w- What is the fun in going? Like, I don't. You have a box, right? It was tennis, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Open,
it
yeah, it
was
was U.S.
something.
Open tennis, yeah, or was it golf? No, you can't do a box for golf. You got to like walk around and
Yeah.
shit. Like they're not gonna like they're not gonna do that. Um, but yeah, I'm always surprised like billionaires getting it. Like Bobby Kotick loves tennis enough, with like NFL or
I can think of
Lakers.
I can think of nothing appropriate for why Bobby Kotick would be anywhere.
Other than prison. Um,
Man.
we're making jokes. We're getting spicy today.
I mean, Jesus. I mean, what do those two even have in common? Were they sharing notes from the little black book? I'm not gonna go there.
Oh, okay. So I want to talk a couple more positives of Astro. One thing that they did really, really clever that I didn't realize until maybe 3 hours in, where I wasn't getting frustrated. Those challenge levels really ratchet up in difficulty.
Oh yeah, yeah, the
Like,
button ones.
yeah,
Yeah.
they it's like, the first set, or the first 2 sets are kinda like, "Yeah, but then, Circle gets much harder,
That's where
and
I
then after.
started. That was the first one I found, and I was like, "Oh my god, what?"
Oh my god. Um, but one of the reasons why I mean, and I have got mad at a couple of I won't lie, but they don't reset the music with reloading. One, the loading's pretty quick, but they don't reset the music, so it doesn't feel like everything stops. It
Hmm.
has that Super Meat Boy.
There's one level in particular that really kind of annoyed me because they're like, "Oh, do it to the beat," and there's no beat. Like nothing in the level goes to the music in the level, and everything is on its own timer and beat. So there's no rhythm beat to it at all whatsoever. And Mario 3D World absolutely does this because the whole level is based on blocks like red and blue blocks switching, and it does it to the beat of the music of the background. It goes din dun 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 din 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 bam boom. And every time it goes din 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 boom, like it like swaps. So you have to time all your jumps and movement to this 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this game says it literally says like jump to the rhythm or jump to the beat. Nothing to do with it.
Wait,
Music is separate from the stage, from the elements in the stage. Every single thing is moving at its own pace and on its own timing. So there's nothing. There's no music based anything there. The music is good, sometimes pretty good, but it's also kind of like I got real sick of the electronica by the end of it. So that when like a when a sort of bluegrass, banjo based level came up, I was actually really happy just to hear because I was like, I'm a little tired of like like it's cute and it's clever and it's a little earwormy and it's great, but it's also there's a part of me that can't shake the fact that this does sound like someone's using higher quality samples to make beep bop boop music. Yes, it's Astro Bot. I get it. I get it. But it's like, Mario was always based on beat bop electronica version of bluegrass. And then when it went 3D, Mario Galaxy, what they did is they went full ass orchestra,
yeah.
like straight up. And I remember the funniest comment I ever read when I ran a video game website was someone saying like, I don't think the music fits in Mario Galaxy at all. Imagine like listening to like it's like having a full orchestra behind a Tom and Jerry, short. And I'm like, classic Tom and Jerry and Looney Tunes always
They
had
did.
full orchestras. What are you talking about? You lunatic? Like, like so that was a thing. So yeah, I the music is it's good. It's not phenomenal, but it definitely wears out its welcome by then because you hear it's like bow, wow, bow, now, bow, bow, wow, bow, now. What's your
You
name? Acrobot, Acrobot. It's like it's kind of like it almost feels like you're in like the children's aisle a little bit by the end of it because multiple songs within the soundtrack do the thing where they're like, "What's your name? Acrobot. I am Astrobot." Yes, we get it. Like,
did
okay,
you play this all in one sitting or in like 2 sittings?
two.
2 sitting. Alright, that's why. That like, I have not had this one, not every song is like that. there's like the tree level and like dude rating and
The tree level was really cool because it's he has his own song and
yeah.
stances, and I don't
Um,
like I said, sometimes the music is great.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is, but it's not rare level.
I've
Like it's
only ever played in like I mean, I've played multiple 2-hour blocks on like a
Mhm.
Saturday. This last Saturday I had, but I only played for like an hour to 2 hours in a run at
Yeah.
any one time. And so I haven't gotten nearly as
Yeah, like the tree music,
bored.
the hub world music is fantastic. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's a bad experience, but I will say that like if there's anything, because I say this is about a gnat's dick hair's length away from being as good as Mario Galaxy or Mario Odyssey. Like the things that kind of
Okay.
hold it back a little bit is that the soundtrack doesn't quite hit the highs, is one thing. Astrobot has zero mobility. He has like three things he can do. He can jump. I mean, that's not even ability. He has a hover jump, and he has a punch and a spin punch. That's it. He
Yeah,
has
well,
he
if you're
has
not
no
counting
he
his
has,
gimmicks that he gets.
well, which you get specifically for a level, and then they're gone until that gimmick comes back way later.
Yeah.
So it's he's fun, but he doesn't have a super big repertoire of moves. Like just thinking about what if you just think of Mario 64, the man can jump, double jump, triple jump. He can dive. He can crouch. He can dive kick. He can backflip. He can side jump and stuff like that. Wall jump. He can do all this stuff. Even in Mario 64, Astrobot, he jump and he go
That's
and
fair.
punch.
I
And
thought
I'm
you
like,
were gonna say someone on the internet that I was incredulous with was like they're like, oh, I mean, Astrobot doesn't have any personality, not like Mario. I was like, well, Mario doesn't have
I
personality.
think he has a ton of personality. I just think like, okay, yeah. So mobility is, and here's the thing: the levels are built around his limitations.
Yeah,
So it's not like, oh, the level design's bad because he can't do things. No, it's fine. The levels are built with what he can and can't do in mind, that's good level design.
yeah,
It's just he's not as fun to control as say Mario in say Mario 64 or Mario Odyssey. He doesn't have this sort of like crazy free range of movement and stuff that you can do in those games. And again, this is why it's like it's a gnat's a fly or a gnat's dick hair away from being that
yeah.
level of je ne sais quoi.
I mean, it might also just like one of the reasons I might love it as much as I do is it is a pretty straightforward. Like it's not. There's nothing overly complex about the platforming. Like the
Yeah.
platforming does get more difficult, and it does like
Mhm.
they do some
Yeah.
unique things, but it isn't like you know, again, Super Meat Boy or some of the crazier platformers. It's not any of the Looney Tunes platformers, or even like Tropical Freeze level of like speed and all that. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't
Yeah, yeah,
necessarily.
yeah.
You can do things really, really fast.
Well, that's the other
But
thing too, is like when you're not looking for something, if you just run through any given level, point A to B, and end of the level, it is quick.
yeah,
Levels do not take super long at all. When you're not looking for anything, you blaze right through that game.
well, I actually am listing this as a pro for me because I don't play a lot of platform. It's not that I dislike platformers, I just don't play a lot of them.
Oh,
And so for me, this is fantastic.
this is a very very high quality platformer. This is better than like 90% of platformers that come out.
It makes me like it makes me wonder why haven't we seen more platform is it like does it what is this team is this team brand new to this game?
No, this is the remnants of Sony Japan Studio.
Interesting.
Like when Sony shut it down, and then they regrouped a smaller group of them to be called Team Asobi, and they just make Astrobot games, and that's all that's left of Sony Japan.
Really?
Yeah,
And so they make every Astrobot game that comes out,
right.
huh.
They did the Playroom and they did this, and this is basically the only two games they've done since Sony got rid of Sony Japan Studios.
I'm I'm sort of shocked that Sony would do that. But then again, Sony has no plan. I guess we should
Well,
any
because
last
I
Astrobot.
mean, here's the thing: is like, why did they get rid of them? Because like Sony Japan was mostly doing stuff for Vita, like Puppeteer and Tearaway, and they were doing like smaller things, or they were helping out on as a support studio for other things. They weren't making God of War, Last of Us, even Days
Right.
Gone, Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon, Spider-Man. They weren't making those kind of games. So Sony basically just said, screw it. They're just making these fun, quirky little, smaller titles on the Vita that don't sell because, and so, Sony killed the Vita themselves. They had like one of the greatest, honestly, besides that memory stick. You take away that memory stick problem, you have one of the greatest portable systems ever. Remember the default Vita was an OLED screen?
Yeah.
Like they started with OLED. They started dual analog on portable. They had two touchscreens. They had a touchscreen on the back. It was really fun on Little Deviants, but it wasn't. Not a lot of other games used it as much. But anyways, they had a ton of stuff. They had this feature rich, beautiful, like compact, strong portable system, and they murdered it.
It- they're
And then
bringing one. They're coming out with another one.
yeah, that's the heavy rumors that they're starting to rethink the portable market. I'm like, of course you are.
Yeah,
Um,
they're gonna do another one. Um, I mean, I didn't even need to know that it was like a heavy rumor. I just like I can see them.
this is like this rumor comes up, and we're just both like, yeah, of course, we've been literally touting this for years.
Yeah. Duh. I just one of the things about Sony, and I was for those of you that remember Nicholas DeLeon, we were from Consumer Reports. He was a guest on the show once.
Mhm.
Um, we had this back and forth where I really like it drives home that Sony really doesn't have a plan at all. They're following the same game plan that's been established for the last 20
Mm.
years, right? Xbox 360 Elite came out in 2007. Then that was, I think that's what birthed the mid-generation upgrade. And granted,
Which
the
is funny
Xbox
because
360 Elite was a much bigger upgrade. It went from 20 gigabyte hard drive to like 200
what
gigabyte or
wasn't it just the hard drive? Like the hardware didn't get better.
no, it got better CPU, I think, and some other things, I think.
I don't think any games ran any better on it as opposed to. If you're talking about 360, you're talking about Xbox One
No,
X.
I was talking about the 360 versus the Elite.
Right, and I think that was done to basic. That was more of a ploy just to get rid of all the defaulty manufacturing they had on the initial models of the 360. So it was like, oh well, we'll sell it as an upgrade and yada yada. But like the system itself, there's no elite enhanced featured 360 games. You know what I mean? Like a
Oh,
PS4.
no, you're
Yeah.
right. Basically, the only difference was that hard drive. And so if you waited for the Slim, you basically got an even bigger hard drive.
Mm.
Uh, no, I thought there was a difference, but you're completely right. But that was where that birthed, right? And then every generation after that has had some sort of um mid-generation.
If anything, it'd be interesting to look back at like the mid generation console refreshes and stuff because
Right.
Genesis kind of did it. There was the NES had the top loader, and there was the SNES, like the smaller SNES that really late in life, and 3 models of Genesis, and technically 2 models of Saturn, and
Well, so
two or three PS2 models. Like,
I'm not considering like slims and releases towards the end of the life that because those all came out cheaper in a lot of cases too.
yeah, yeah.
I'm talking about like the upgrade where it also costs more and they're trying to sell you on buying this thing again, right?
I think
Um,
I don't know if I'm trying to think in my head if this is the first big one, but because everything on PS3 was just losing features, cut it, cut it, cut it, cut it, cut it.
yeah.
There's a really weird version of the PS3 Super Slim that has a slide door.
Well, okay,
It's
PS3 was
super.
such a big misstep. Everyone it, everyone assumes that the PS4 was such a big hit because they learned lessons from PS3, and I actually don't think that's true. I think the PS4 was a big hit not because they learned lessons from the PS3, but because they were coming out behind the Xbox, and every idea the Xbox said that got a negative response, all Sony did was like, "Well, we're not going to do that." and they hit big. They've
You know,
never had a plan.
in a way, they were learning. They were learning. They were basically watching the guy next to them trip over stuff and then just avoid and then stepping over everything they tripped over.
Right. And unfortunately, Xbox won't do the same thing now. No, Xbox always wants to go their own way. And so they've been tripping for 15
You know,
years now.
I know people will push back on you on that a little bit, but here's the thing where I think you're right is number one, I distinctly remember working on an Xbox One launch title before the system came out
Yeah.
and talking with people in development in the industry behind the scenes. And I mean, this is going to have to, you're just going to have to, you take my word or don't for it. The buzz around the industry at the time, everyone was Sony is going to do the exact same thing. Microsoft was just open about it.
Well, yeah, because it was an open secret. The things that's the reason there's no disk drive on the PS5 Pro and why you have to buy it separate is they are slowly trying to price you out of buying physical. They
Right.
do not want physical media to continue.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. But
This
like
has
the
been
whole
something they've wanted for 3
yeah,
generations or 2
the
generations.
always online thing was going to be in the PS4.
Absolutely.
Every single person within the actual industry that at the time, we're talking spring of 2013. This was like, yeah, yeah, this is what they're doing. We know this. Everyone had heard the same thing. Everyone was under like, you know, so they reacted very quickly because it was funny how Larry Herb, I think it was Larry Herb who said it. It was like, it's not just a switch we can press. I'm like, yes, it was just a switch you can press.
Yeah.
like just telling the
Delete,
system
delete,
not,
delete.
yeah, just telling the system to not do an online check constantly was absolutely a simple thing you could do because you know it was half a year away from release. You just all you had to do was internally tell it not to stop. You don't need to check every 5 minutes or whatever.
Right.
So it was a switch. It was a switch they could literally press, and it was an easy enough fix and a quick enough fix that they could literally watch because Microsoft gave them the greatest gift. They had 2 E3 press conferences in 2013. They had the early one, the TV Xbox 360 press conference, which was a week or 10 days before E3, and it gave Sony everything they needed to know. Oh yeah, that's a really bad idea. Let's not do that.
Right.
And then they had their actual Xbox press conference afterwards where they were still sticking to their guns. 1 week after E3, Xbox decided to change course and flip the switch.
Too late.
It was too late.
Yeah.
They waited a week too long to reverse their ideals.
And now we're watching Sony make the same mistakes that, Xbox did, and we're just watching Xbox not take advantage of that.
Yeah. Oh, and you know what? I got on a tangent here, but here's my actual point, Andrew. This is where you're correct here. Microsoft and Sony were doing the exact same thing last generation with the PS4 and the Xbox One. Microsoft just, frankly, we're far enough into the video. Microsoft fucked it up because none of their projects came out had all kinds of issues coming out, either huge issues getting it out and launched or just outright canceling it. I can pull up, I can find it, but there was a big list of, and I think I went over it on one of the earlier episodes, within the last month, all the canceled games on Xbox One.
Yeah.
This huge list of major projects. I mean, Scalebound you all know about, but it's like there's an Obsidian RPG in there. There was Fable Legends. There was all these things. Microsoft actually tried to make big, giant games on Xbox One, but they just have terrible project management. And Sony had a benefit there where at the time, the autonomous nature of the studios, because they didn't even own Insomniac, but Spider-Man took a while to come out. The first Spider-Man was announced and shown many times before it came out.
It was at 3 E3s?
It was something like that, yeah, like something like 3 E3s. But anyways, God of War 2018, Sony Santa Monica, Naughty Dog, Sucker Punch, Guerrilla Games, because they had Killzone Shadowfall, which no one remembers, and then they did Horizon way later on. They were able to get their games out, and they were kind of just doing with because Sucker Punch started with Infamous Second Son. It was part 3 to a series from PS3. It wasn't like some grand plan. Same with Killzone. It was part 3 or 4 to Killzone. that they'd always done. Insomniac, they actually went quiet for a while so that they could get Spider-Man out. You know, but they had Ratchet and Clanks and Resistance. Nobody remembers Resistance, but whatever.
Some people sort of remember Resistance. That was one of the big ones that people were like, when Sony said they didn't have any IPs, and people were
Yeah.
like, Resistance, am I a joke to you?
Yeah.
And the answer is
Um,
yes.
But Naughty Dog, and Naughty Dog, it's like, what did they do first on PS4? Uncharted 4, and then Last of Us 2. And Sony Santa Monica was like the big one where it's like, okay, what's Sony Santa Monica going to do after God of War Ascension? God of War. They did another God of War, but they did the big gameplay shift. But I mean, these were established. Thing was, is Sucker Punch, Gorilla, Insomniac, Sony Santa Monica, and Naughty Dog. These are established studios who
Right.
had done big budget cinematic third person sad dad games already on the PS3. Microsoft's problem was that, and this is where Phil was right. Microsoft didn't have a lot of first party studios going into Xbox One. It was Gears, Halo, Forza, and they lost Bungie going into
Yeah.
Xbox One. And Epic wasn't really interested in continuing Gears of War, and they had to set up a whole new development studio to continue Gears of War. They had one studio, had Playground Games and Turn 10 to make Forza going into Xbox One from the 360. That's why they bought all these studios. That's why they made all these moves. That's why they had to sort of resurrect Rare, you know, from all the crap Don Matrick had put them through. So this is where I don't think Sony had a plan. They just kept trucking along, and Microsoft came, you know, to a head where it's like, oh crap, we really don't have any first party studios. We should fix that. Yeah, okay,
Right.
you know, throw money at a wall, hope everything sticks. Oh my god, it doesn't. It actually it takes project management, which we don't have. We did that. We couldn't just buy project management. What? So
It was on the shopping list. They just couldn't find the aisle.
just couldn't.
Um,
So yeah, I don't think Sony had this plan. I think Sony was just doing what Sony was. Frankly, Sony did everything on PS4 that they did on PS3. Microsoft just screwed up, and they were just the only other guy there. Like,
Um,
let's not forget how much the Wii U was dying during this phase.
this is something that's also indicative of the precarious nature of the industry right now. The industry's making insane profits. Everybody remembers that. And this is where I'm going to get pushback. People are, it's never made so much money. In must have been like 81 or 82. Well, the last collapse was in 83, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Uh, the industry was having similar problems of scope creep and no
Mhm.
fresh ideas, and you know, we are in that sort of dearth again where I'm not saying like, oh, we're about to fail, because again, yeah, there is a lot of profit out there, and it's the largest the industry's ever been. There's a larger market for gaming now than has ever existed ever.
Yeah,
But we are in a point where like there's enough risk averse people in charge to where no new ideas are coming, that they could run themselves into the ground. They like
yeah,
people could just stop. It Concord could be a signal flare, not just that like people are tired of live services, which they totally are because they stick to one forever, but also it could just be like people are tired of the same old thing, the clone, the whatever. You know, and maybe it's not, you know, that complicated. Bring back what is it? It's Ubisoft that did like Splinter Cell, but like bring
yeah,
back that whole genre of game is sort of gone. Like the
yeah. The stealth game. Yeah,
Last of Us has stealth in it, but like it's not a stealth game. But the point that I'm getting is like there's a whole genre there that nobody's doing anything with.
yeah.
It was one
It's
of the
just been
most
gone.
popular genres there is. Like
Yeah, yeah. Because Splinter Cell and Metal Gear, and both of them are gone.
so it's like you have areas to play. We don't have enough IP. Shut the fuck up and create some. You are that literally your job. And the thing about games that is it's one of the best things about games. It's something that as a writer or as like a storyteller can be frustrating, but like stories and games don't technically need to make sense. It's nice when they do. And nowadays, the last say 10-ish years, there's been a lot of work in storytelling in games, but like Metal Gear, the original Metal Gear is nonsensical.
It is. Well,
Is-
it's just the fucking rock.
Yeah, the first Metal Gear 5, the whole point of its story was to retroactively try and make sense of the first two games,
That is true. So for
right?
people who don't know, the whole reason Venom Snake exists and why Big Boss, because Metal Gear 1 and 2 don't make sense. How is Big Boss the same
Alive.
person in one and two? And how does this even line up? Oh, because there were two big bosses. Like
Right. And
five is just is sort of not retconning, it's trying to make this fit.
yeah, great. I'm glad that they did that, but like there's all sorts of iconic games where the story's nonsense. And that's fine. We still love them, but that's my point. Is like a game doesn't have to have Astrobot doesn't. It has the most basic narrative. They're
Astrobot
flying.
barely has a narrative.
Yeah, it's like it is the tiniest, littlest like cause and effect narrative there is. The point that I want to get at there is like it gaming is the easiest to create an IP out of nothing because
Yes.
you just have to have a gameplay hook. Build That's all they did in the 80s and the 90s is they came up with a gameplay hook that was fun, a loop that was fun to do, and then they
Yeah.
made up a story around it.
The only thing that drives me nuts, and I had a whole podcast with Easy Allies about this, is when you get someone like Miyamoto who just doesn't, he just wants to repeat the same story over and over, like what he's done with Star Fox, where it's just like
Yeah.
it's this. I'm just constantly remaking the same game, where that gets a little annoying. Where you're like,
Yeah.
do we need to remake SNES Star Fox, a 10th time, dude? Like I get it. I get it. Don't get me wrong. Star Fox Command, that story went wild. That is an archive of furry fan fiction, dispart and furry fanfic stories in Star Fox Command. I get it. I get it. But I
There's this
mean, there's also the fact I'm like, well, we don't need to remake the same game every time you make the game. I mean, I feel like Zelda's in that loop. When playing Tears of the Kingdom, I was like, I'm playing a remake of like Ocarina, and like a really weird remake of Ocarina. Wait, we're like, because I don't know if you played. Did you play Tears of the Kingdom? There were cutscenes, the memories, tears that you find, and they redo whole cutscenes from Ocarina. And I'm like,
but
but with like the new characters, and I'm like, really, we're doing this
huh.
again?
There's this thing one of my writing teachers said that I don't necessarily agree with, and like it's not Bible, it's not like dogma, but basically he was like pretty much every writer sticks to the same story in every story they tell. They change
Oh
the
yeah,
names, the locations, but it's basically always the same story. And
Tim Burton's the greatest example of this.
Tim Burton is a perfect example of this. He's like, what really makes the greats separate from, the not so greats is that the greats can continue to hide that story, can continue to hide that story in new ideas and new stories in interesting ways.
Yeah,
Um, the not so greats are blatant, or they do try to change their story, and it goes awfully. A perfect example of this would be like George Lucas has been telling the same story in every single one of his movies, period, that he made.
yeah,
Um, and um, sort of easy to see. Lucas is an easy example to pick on because he's the most uh, obvious is the wrong word because I'm not trying to be insulting at all. I'm not. Um, he is very clearly hero's journey plain. Like
yeah.
whatever story he's telling, it's almost always a
And
young.
he's definitely a quote unquote rebel. He's always against, the sort of authoritarian or the system. He's
Yeah.
always against this stuff. He literally became that. So,
Well, that's one of my favorite interviews with him ever, where he was like, I was so pissed at the studio system, so I went and started my own studio, and apparently I did really well. I became the people I hate. He says that in an interview, and you're just kind of like, man, that guy, he's built for honesty. guy does
his
not lie.
his self-aware dude. I mean, though I will like no one will ever forget it, and I'm sure Disney's pissed about it, but I'm like, I sold Star Wars to white slavers, and I'm like,
I
Everyone was like, "Why would he say such a thing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm like Simpsons quote. It's true, but he shouldn't say it."
I mean, he's out of line, but that's true.
He's right. He's
Um,
not lying, but he's right.
it's something that the the more I pay attention to the business, like the actual business side of the film industry, the more I'm pro Lucas, the more I'm like, oh man, he had a point. Like it's like that meme with the Michael Douglas movie Falling Down, except not an asshole, and so I don't empathize with him as I get older, but I empathize with Lucas as I get older. I'm kind of like, oh, he has a point. Oh, he has a point. Oh, okay.
I think this is why he sold it, even though it's his baby, his cash cow. He sold it for $4 billion, and then he's like, I'm just gonna walk away.
Yeah.
I'm already, I know I'm already rich, and I've like literally just become the thing I hate. You guys can have it.
Well,
Here.
he still mentors. He's one of the only filmmakers that had great success that continued to mentor new filmmakers. Like, say what you will about any of the other greats,
Mhm.
not a lot of them are doing much mentorship, and Lucas
No,
continued
I
to
know. I
do.
mean, and it's funny how that's such a thing in film where like all of the greats never mentored really. They
Yeah,
like they've
and what's funny is they had mentors, right? I mean, it's a real problem with the film industry in general. Every person that I've known that's had a mentor was a cinematographer. And
Mm,
if they had a mentor as a cinematographer, they are now cinematographers. One of the most successful friends I have generally, he runs his own production company and he's stayed to the marketing side of it though. He's a fantastic cinematographer. He can do commercial lighting in his sleep because commercial lighting, like green screen lighting, is basically the same thing most every time. Um, bright, airy.
yeah.
Um, but he is genuinely like one of the best. He's been doing it since he was 16. He literally has been working in the industry since he was 16. But when he was 16, he got fired his first day on set. He was working in the lighting department and he accidentally plugged in some Christmas lights to the to the wrong power strip and it blew out all the lights on set. And so he got fired 15 minutes into his first day. And the cinematographer was pissed that somebody fired this brand new dude. And so brought him on as a second AC,
Mm,
essentially the guy doing the clapper, and stuff like that, and the measurements. Um, and so he ended up by happenstance being mentored by this lady and brought up through it.
mhm.
And same goes for every cinematographer that I know, really. They had mentorship. It's almost impossible to find a director that's willing to mentor. You got guys like Josh Stolberg, who is he did a lot of horror movies. I think he wrote Good Luck Chuck, but he's done a bunch of horror movies like Sorority Row. He was director for. I think he wrote like Piranha 3D. Like he's a screenwriter that does like horror movies and stuff. He still is very interested in mentorship, and I think you can follow him on Instagram and on Twitter and
Well,
he
the
does
thing is
mentorships
that
all the time, but
these directors are doing it till they're dead. Clint Eastwood's still directing movies. Like Steven Spielberg's still directing movies. Like
Steven Spielberg is an
the
interesting.
these
Yeah.
people, Martin Scorsese is still directing movies. They're not mentoring because they're still in their mind. They're still in the game.
Well, what's odd is this is a recent occurrence. It used to be impossible to be an old man in the film industry, to be an old man director. Billy Wilder got the cold shoulder from Spielberg. Billy Wilder was one of Spielberg's friends and couldn't get any work. He's considered one of the greatest directors of all time. He's one of my favorite directors. He was still in the 90s. He was still trying to get things made. He couldn't get anything made because he was too old and they thought he couldn't connect with the audiences of today, of that time. And he found this amazing screenplay finally. Spielberg was so on his side. He was like, the next project you got, Billy, I'll back it and I'll get it made because Billy Wilder was so upset. So Billy comes, he's got this great script. It's so amazing. It's called Schindler's List. And I got to tell this story. Well, Spielberg made Schindler's List. So I guess he couldn't help Billy make that. But the point is like Billy Wilder stopped. He made he literally created whole genres. And he basically, after 50 or 60, just stopped making movies. Up until the last 15 years, even, old directors just weren't doing it.
Yeah.
Like it was considered a young man's game. Like by 60, you're out, you're done. But yeah, none of them really. I mean, maybe behind closed doors they're mentoring. Spielberg has a daughter. One of his daughters is a filmmaker, so I'm sure he mentored his daughter. It's like it's not like
I think Max Spielberg just directed something as well. I think.
so if he's got two directors for kids, so I'm sure he is mentoring. I'm just saying like Lucas stayed. Sorry, if you joined LucasArts and rubbed shoulders with Lucas, there's all sorts of people that went through LucasArts that got mentored by Lucas, not just like on the business side of it and everything. And that's something that a mentor is extremely valuable in, is like the art form and writing, and this is all true. Just doing it will teach you a lot. You want to know how to shoot films? We learned doing Assist Me with literally $25 Chinese lights that blew out almost every other shoot. Like that if you had them on too long, you'd start to smell burning plastic and be pretty certain you were getting cancer. Like, but the point is like you get a camera, you get the lights, you'll figure it out, you'll shoot it. And I mean, yeah, you look back at Assist Me now and you go, "Yeah, that's pretty rough." But at the time, we were shooting on like 1.8 lenses, f-stop 1.8, like we were trying to do the most ambitious crap for the time. Nowadays people are shooting on like Black Magics, and stuff online is just as good as TV at least. But my point is like for that kind of stuff you can find, but the business side of it, like it's almost impossible to figure out. My friend who got mentored, he also got a mentor on the business side who was a producer at Anonymous Content. Anonymous Content, if you don't know who they are, they're one of the biggest content producers in the world. Movies, TV, commercials, everything. And the reason you don't know who they are is, you guessed it, their name is Anonymous Content. They don't make a big deal of it. But one his business mentor in the industry was a guy, one of the producers and executives at Anonymous Content. Like invaluable stuff. He got super lucky, super hard worker, but he got super lucky in the sense that is how you go anywhere in that industry. And Lucas kept that door open, which is rare. So I'm pretty pro Lucas is I guess what I'm getting at as this long aside. And we haven't even talked about the PS5 Pro really.
No, you just Andrew really wanted to work for Lucasfilm, but it got sold to Disney now. So,
oh, dude, if I would have got hired, if I could have got hired at Lucasfilm, I would have gone in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
no qualms at all. Like, if I could have found a mentor in industry at all, anyone, but I did not. No luck. The PS5 Pro though. I want to jump over to that. Nobody mentored it, and that's why it's making all the wrong mistakes. It is making the same mistakes. I think that the PS4 Pro made some similar small jumps, but the PS4 Pro, I owned both, and I would say the Pro wasn't that huge of a jump either.
Yeah. Well,
but it also wasn't $200 more expensive, right?
That's the thing. That's really. I mean, right off the bat, here's PS5 Pro. Like, am I getting one? No. I doubt you are.
No. I have a launch PS5. There's no reason.
I have a launch PS5 as well, and it's $200. It's $300. Let's be real here. It's $300 more
if you want a disc drive, yeah.
Than the PS5. Why is it why do I say 300? Because you're getting a digital only. There is no disc version of the PS5 Pro. They are strictly selling just digital hard drive only. You can purchase a disc drive, an attachable disc drive to it, but you are buying a digital only system.
You don't even get a vertical stand, by the way.
Yeah, you don't even get a vertical. I lost mine. I don't even know where mine went. I don't even care. I don't need it. But anyways, like, yeah, it doesn't even have that courtesy is even out of the box. So it's really a $300 upgrade. Like, let's stop pussyfooting around what this actually is. There's the $400 PS5,
right,
that doesn't have a disc drive. that you could buy $100 disk drive or an $80 disk drive add-on. This is a $700 disk drive, no disk drive PS5 Pro. It's a $300 upgrade. And what does this upgrade give you is again, more ray tracing, faster frame rates, and AI upscaling. And I think the thing is that was really funny how someone pointed out. I'm like, they're kind of selling you almost like openly telling you like something that's sort of like almost like not a scam, but like they're using AI to upscale. So it's not native 4K.
Yeah. Well, okay.
So the whole idea with PSSR is like it could use AI to upscale the pixels. I'm like, but isn't the point of this to get the 4K as the native resolution it doesn't need to use upscaling? Isn't that the point?
Well, the larger CPU is to make the upscaling better, but the reason why it's not a
Right.
fully upgraded CPU, why it's not like a whole new generation of CPU, is because they don't want to spend that kind of money. The two things that I picked up: one, positive. If you don't have a PS5 and you want a PS5 and you have a little bit of extra cash, why not? Yeah,
Why not? Because it's $300 more than a base PS5.
if I'm saying that if you want it and you don't want to wait 2 years for it to come on PC or whatever, whatever. I'm not going to like poo poo you if you've got the money to burn, you want to do it, fine. I think you will be happy if you buy the thing. I'm saying if you have a PS5 or a PS5 Slim already, there's no sell here. The other thing is it's so clear to me that they picked a price point. They did market research on what they thought they could get, and then they turned around and were like, "Mark, what can we get for the extra $100?" Because there's a profit margin to this one that they're not disclosing. Yeah, it's like, Mark, what can you get out of an extra $100 of parts? And Mark got what he could get out of it, and that is a larger CPU, ray tracing, 2 to 3 times PS5, and the AI driven upscaling. Now, I want to talk about the AI thing for a second, because in it they're all like, "Oh, they use machine learning." Well, machine learning is what everything they're calling AI now, they were calling machine learning like 2 or 3 years ago. But in marketing, they try to differentiate, because now they're trying to raise money with like investors and stuff by selling you artificial intelligence. There's nothing intelligent. It's inputs giving you outputs, which is just standard old machine learning. Still cool. Just there's no on the fly calculation. I love that they mixed the messaging here to where it's almost like they weren't sure if AI was going to turn people off.
Well, they really did too, and not even just AI, because I think the most important quote from this that struck me the hardest, and I'm not letting it go, is when Mark Cerny says in their research, in their data, 75% of people turned their game to performance mode instead of fidelity.
Right.
And most games default to fidelity or graphics.
Right.
And most of them default on graphics, and you have to manually go in and switch to performance. And 75% of the people who spent half a grand, potentially, maybe they spent 400 for a disc, no disc version, were opting instead for performance. And so the idea here is that, like, now, we're trying to narrow that gap. We're trying to take, so you don't have to choose. And there's part of me that sits there and almost wanted to punch him in the throat a bit, where it's like the idea that you need ray tracing and graphics this good is a huge factor in why this industry has been driven to the cliff that it has been, because of this incessant effing need for higher and higher and higher fidelity graphics. My water surfaces need to real time reflect what's on them. Do they? Was that worth 10,000 people getting fired?
Yeah, look, it's cool.
So you could have shadows and reflections like that. And then the fact that people systematically at a 75%, 3 to 4 margin, systematically said, you know what? I don't care. I will turn it off. I would rather the game run better. So now they're saying, like, well, all right, fine. We'll give you both, but give me $300 more dollars.
Yeah. I honestly, yeah, it reads more like they're trying to take away a choice from you, is what it looks like.
I mean, granted, it's just kind of like, oh well, like, don't you want to have both? Don't you want to have both? I'm like, do we need to be spending? Do we need to be getting this close to $1,000 US? Do we?
Yeah. Um,
And here's the thing. Here's the other thing. What's the first game? The first game they showed showcasing the PS5 Pro, a PS4 game.
well, half of the early PS5 games are just PS4 games.
Right. And then most of the games that they showcase in this little itty bitty thing were cross-gen titles.
Yeah.
Like even Horizon 2 had PS4 versions of these games. Last of Us 2 did. It's like Ghost of Tsushima was used a lot. And I'm like, great. My PS4 game can look even more graphical.
Yeah.
Like, surely I need to spend $700-800 on this. Surely. It's totally worth it.
One thing that like people really had hopes for that I think is very funny because they keep hoping for it and it's clear Sony has no interest in it, is like full backwards compatibility, where they're all like, oh, it's at this time they're going to have it with the Pro. They're going to have it. They don't want to. They
Yeah,
clearly do want to do it.
If the PS5 Pro came with a disk drive, not separately for an additional cost,
Yeah.
if it came with a disk drive and even through, via emulation, because of their super duper turbo CPU, let you emulate your PS1, PS2, and PS3 games, as well as all the PS4 games that already natively run on the PS5, that's a system seller.
Yeah.
That would have been a system seller. Like you could put your disc from PlayStation 3 or 2 into the PS5 Pro and it will run.
This is one of those things where like I'm sure they did market studies. It's not like they just pulled these ideas out of their hat or, where they're like, oh, people want less loading times. They want less, they want more power. This is one of those situations where it's like, I don't know if loading bothers people as much as like having to constantly load. You know what I mean? Like if you don't have clever ways of hiding loading, like if you have to go to a loading screen, yeah, people are going to they want less loading. But like nowadays, loading in the PS4 era was fast enough that they'd hide loading. Coming to mind is like The Last of Us, where like you go through like crevices, or
Right.
in God of War, like they hide loading in those ways. So it's fast enough.
Loading tunnels and stuff.
Yeah, you can hide loading. So I don't think load times bother anybody. Not really. But if you put out like a survey or you do market research, depending on who you're asking, I guess, like, yeah, you go, what's a negative or what's something that you hate about games or whatever? And someone goes like, oh, long loading times. So you go, oh, we really got to focus on loading. It's like, but the issue of loading has been solved.
Also, I don't even think 4K is crazy. It's hard to sell that in a way because when you're watching a YouTube video, even at a 4K YouTube video, it's not 4K, it's compressed to hell and back. When you're live streaming something, you can't live stream anything above 1080p still, on Twitch or whatever. So it's like people who are streaming this, they themselves, when they announce this stuff and have their presentations and are live streaming it, everyone's first impression is seeing a super highly compressed 1080p version of everything. So it's all this weird thing where it's just like, this is so much better. And it's like, I guess if I have that monitor, if I have that hookup, as I sit and play alone in the dark, not the game, but yes, it is this hyper optimal experience. And I don't know, to me, I'm just so struck by the fact that people bought into the PlayStation 5 already, which is already the weakest console generation upgrade I have ever seen in my life. As far as like, wow, the system that didn't need to exist kind of thing, because they were still making the exact same games, releasing them content complete on the old system with the new system for like 4 years, and they are still releasing PS4 games to this day.
Right.
Many of their
Yeah.
games are cross gen. They only just finally cut the cord themselves on first party. So this has been the weakest. And what did people do? Even when they got that big upgrade, that's playing a game that's also a PS4 game, even when they had the ability to play it, at 4K with all kinds of fancy ray tracing, who dods and doodads and what's it's, what did they do? They went to performance mode.
I it's one of those things where you're like, they don't have a finger on the pulse because there is no pulse. They don't like if they wanted to make changes that actually like people would really love. One, you just bring back Bloodborne, and but 60 frames a second standard is consistently one of the things that they really want.
Yeah.
Okay, so performance is obviously the thing they should focus on, but graphics is what is easy to market.
Yeah, but and then the weird thing I say there's like they can't even show that off anymore.
Right. But but it's easy to say like there are there's ways to like when you see them do those side by sides, the human eye, like yeah, there's little things that they have to zoom in on to be like, see, but they can zoom in. They can't necessarily zoom in on 60 frames versus 30 frames because no matter how much you want to believe it, a lot of people can't fucking tell. They
I
can't tell
think
the
you
extra
can.
frames.
You definitely can tell side by side.
Side by side, it's more
Or
exaggerated. But
even worse is play in 60, then switch it over to 30. Do it for like 2 seconds. Your eyes will be like your eyes will want to barf.
the thing is, though, is like if you only play in 30, you don't notice.
Well,
Like
that's the thing
it's
is though, people were going to 60.
yeah.
75% of them were.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not the. It's not what I'm saying is from a marketing perspective, sales, making sales. Graphics is always an easier
Yeah.
selling point than performance because performance is hard to quantify in like an emotional tactile way. Graphics you can say look at how real, look at how beautiful, look at the shadows, look at the light, look at the and they just show you beautiful things and go like this is
Yeah.
what you're going to get.
There was such a weird thing too when they tried to show a Spider-Man 2 where they're like, you can see the leaves clearly in more detail here. And I'm like, man, I'm like, cool, $300 more. Actually, $700-800 or 700 for the system, 800 for like a full featured disc version of the same system. I could see the leaves in higher fidelity. Wow.
Well,
It's not
look
like
at
they're
the
going to accept a trade in of my PS5 for 500 and I can upgrade for 200 or 300. No, like it's like you are asking me to spend another 700 to $800
we're coming up
so
on
I can see
year
better leaves.
we're coming up on year 40 of the number one way to talk about a new generation is to talk about the graphical leap,
Hmm.
right? 40 years the industry has relied on this. And we are now at a place where console generations they can't afford to make those jumps. They can't like the jumps that they're gonna a $300 jump isn't going to be,
Yeah.
night and day. If you look at a 360 versus an original Xbox, you look at a PS3 game versus a PS2 game, you look at a PS2 game versus a PS1 game. Like you can it literally opens your eyes, right? It's an eyebrow waggler,
Yeah,
where you're like, "Huh?" But
there's a great meme image online, showing like a bust of like Mozart or something, and it's like here's a bust of a statue at 60 polygons, 600 polygons, 6,000 polygons, and 60,000 polygons.
right.
And the 60 to 6,000 or 6,000 to 60,000, you almost can't tell the difference because you've got such high graphical fidelity at that point that it's like you have to like zoom in.
It's the same problem that cameras had. So you remember so we shot early episodes of assist me on a 5D Mark II.
Mhm.
Then we switched to a 60D, which technically had lower resolution than the 5D Mark II, and nobody could tell. And Max and I sat there and looked at it, and if you looked at it, the images side by side, yeah, you could sort of tell in
Mhm.
some of the noise and some of the resolution, but like you really couldn't tell. No one's ever gonna look at a 60D versus a 5D on two different days and go, well, this one's the 60D. As a weird aside, the guy that was the head of the film department at the community college I started at, uh, he could tell. Totally colorblind. He was a lighting technician that was totally colorblind.
That's
Uh,
good.
yeah. And I remember he was walking by one time and someone was comparing a 7D to a 5D. And it was this big argument that was going around at the time is like, is the 7D all that much? Where, like, if you're going to do mostly video, the idea was like spend a few $100s less and get a 7D instead of a 5D because in video you can't tell. And I was sitting there, I was stealing a bunch of stuff, consumables to use on Assist Me the next day. uh like tape and gels and stuff. It wasn't really stealing. I was allowed to take it, but I was taking it. And he was walking by and these two editors were yelling back and forth about it. And so they had him up on screens and you can't tell, no one knows which one's which. And he's walking by, he stops and he looks at 75D and he just won't explain how he knew. Just like walked off. Only person I've ever seen be able to tell differences like that. But cameras had the same problem where like you had at one point you had a 200 megapixel Hasselblad. A Hasselblad, for anybody who
Mhm.
isn't a camera nerd, is an extremely high quality, high end photography camera. Um, they came out when 5D Mark II came out, which is a 23 megapixel camera.
Mhm.
Hasselblad came out with a 200
100.
megapixel, so you could take a picture and then zoom all the way in on a grain of sand. They had this image that was snapped of like it was a diamond sitting in sand, and the diamond, everything was in focus. They weren't trying to have nothing in, or like only the diamond in focus, but like when you're looking at it, it looks like the diamond is in the crispest focus. And then you could zoom in on the tiniest little grain of sand and actually blow up so the grain of sand was that big on the screen and it looked crisp, clear, incredible. No one bought that damn camera because it's like an $80,000 camera or something at the time. That's not true. Anne Leibovitz shoots everything on Hasselblad, so her portrait of the Queen was probably on that camera. But the
Oh, you
point
can
is
count her
like,
nose hairs. Nice.
yeah. So, the thing is like those jumps at a certain point stop being impressive, stop mattering. I still shoot photos on my Mark II 5D. They're on like Mark 5 now. It's a 15-year-old camera. It's still fantastic. And I've never had a client or anyone else ever be like, "Oh, what an old camera." Like, no, it still takes beautiful photos because 20 megapixels or 23 megapixels is incredible. Beyond 1080p. Now, granted, I think they should focus on performance at 1440p. This is
Yeah,
a
sure.
it's an odd take, but I don't think 4K is that worth it. It's not enough of a jump. It is a jump,
Mhm.
and you can clearly tell the difference between 1080p
Oh,
and
yeah.
4K, yes, side by side, and I would say even just at a glance. But 4K only matters on big screens.
Right. Yeah. You start like,
Yeah,
yeah, you really start needing bigger monitors, bigger television screens to start really appreciating it more.
and
I'm
well,
not saying you
yes, a
can't. I'm
lot of
just saying
people.
you want it.
Yeah, and on a larger screen, 1080 will still look nice because they're using larger pixel sizes and stuff. But on a 4K screen, that's 60 inches, yeah, 4K is great. But if you're playing on a 32 or less monitor, like the jump just isn't that huge. So if you can get a constant 60 or even better, a 100 frame, a
Yeah,
constant
because they were
100
talking about
frames at
some games going to
1440.
100. They were talking about 120. They mentioned
Yeah,
it in the
and
thing.
that's cool as hell.
It is, but at the same time, here's the thing: regardless of performance increases, who the F cares about these performance increases when the system is $300?
No, yeah, I agree.
I'm sticking to the $300 price point because, again, if you compare a non-disc version of PS5 at $400 to a $700 non-disc version of a PS5 Pro is $300. If you're saying it's only a $200 upgrade to go from one to the other, guess what? If you have a disc version of the PS5, you cannot take that disc and put it on your PS5 Pro. You have to buy a separate accessory. Now I say that's an accessory, that's optional. Here's the thing. All your Blu-rays, all your DVDs, all your physical media will work on your PS5 Pro, but they will not work out of the box. You have to buy another device. So a main feature, watching movies on multiple different formats or
Yeah.
playing any old PS4 games that are not downloaded, you need that disk drive. A major function of the system is in a add-on accessory that you have to pay another fee for. And I off the top of my head, I believe the disk drive for the PS5, because now they sell PS5 Slims without a disk drive, and you can buy
Right.
a disk drive. I'll just look it up real quick. To my knowledge, it's $100.
Yeah,
But
there's one thing that we
it's
did
$80. Sorry, it is $80.
yeah.
But like, let's put some tax onto this sucker, and guess what? It's an $80. It's $100 add-on. For God's sakes.
So one thing that we didn't talk is like some people are like, oh, well, how come they didn't pivot or they should have scrapped this? They started working on the PS5 Pro the day after PS5 launched.
Oh,
The
for sure.
plan for PS5 Pro was probably built into the pitch for PS5. This is something like there's no way. What, the PS5's been out for 4 years, 5 years in
Yeah.
2025, right? It came out in 2020, November of 2020.
2020 for November 2020.
Yeah. Okay. Um, 4 years, they would have the amount of tooling and building up the manufacture. Like it takes a year at least to get tooling for all the new, manufacture the parts and stuff. And then they have to build up the actual parts orders. Yeah, this is off the shelf stuff, I think, but I'm talking about like tooling for like the PS5 Pro cases and all that stuff. That takes quite a lot of time to get built out and stuff. This isn't something that they didn't make this decision 2 weeks ago. Is what I'm getting
No,
at.
they
Like,
didn't, and they didn't
pivoting
make it
here.
They didn't make it 2 months ago. This is Big Jimbo's decision.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was getting at. We're looking at if they wanted to pivot on this, they would have had to pivot in 2021, 2022.
Yeah.
That would have been I could be wrong about this, but this is just general knowledge of manufacturing, and it is, take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
The point is that would have been before they would have sunk too much cost into this. They were talking about this. Cerny has been working on this since 2020, 2021.
Oh, for sure.
Like that's when he started looking at this.
Yeah.
So around 2022 probably is when they could have said, like, you know what, we're just not going to do it for this generation because PS5's not selling well, or PS5.
It is selling well.
Yeah, it's selling well. But my point is like we haven't. This is a bunk generation in the fact that, like you said, for 4 years they've been putting everything on PS4 as well. So it's sort of like a middle child,
right? So it's telling you right then and there, straight up, this system is not so powerful, so advanced that games on the system can't be made on the past generation.
Right.
Because you could never play any PS2 game. Well, maybe some of the silverware, but no Sony game, no first-party Sony game on the PS2 could ever dream of running on PS1. Couldn't even come close. You couldn't even come close to it.
Yeah.
It would have to be it would have to be a vastly different version of the game. Same thing from PS3 to PS2. Like just the Jak and Daxter could never run on PS1. Not in any form, not in any, chopped down. It would have to be completely remade from the ground up to run on PS1.
Right.
Uncharted could never run on a PS2. Just never could. Could you make a game like Uncharted on PS2? Yes, but it'll look like it will look drastically different. So different it would have to be made from the ground up for PS2
And
to
I
make
know
it to make
somebody
it
out
strong.
there's going to be like, yeah, well, up until PS4, they used, different architecture for each. Yes. Okay. Yes. I get that they
Right.
needed
So
custom architecture, but the point still
PS4,
stands.
honestly, even PS4, we're getting to the point where I was like, yeah, you could kind of do these games. You could do most of these games on PS3, probably in some capacity. The thing is, they just probably run really terribly. In fact, and the reason I know this is because basically the Switch is a PS3 Pro. And the fact that they've gotten games like The Witcher 3 and Doom Eternal to run on the Switch tells me that like here there already was a sort of you maybe could have in a really, really awful way made it work. But PS4 was an upgrade, right?
Yeah.
God of War Ragnarok on PS4, yes, it's running at 30, and yes, it's running at like 900p, but it's the same game with the same areas, with the same character models doing the same things.
Right.
It's just running at a lower resolution and a lower frame rate. So what has a PS5 been? A PS4 Pro 2.
Pro.
Yeah, Pro.
PS4 Pro Elite Max.
So saying I need to spend another $800, and I'm sticking to that point because again, if I want a parity, console parity, everything that my PS5 can do, but also with the additions of the PS5 Pro, I need to spend a whopping $780 with tax. It's well over 800, unless I live in Oregon, I guess. I'm spending over $800 to get a pro version of a console that's a pro version of the PS4 Pro.
Right.
I am getting a nominal stepping stone upgrade for the fourth time in a row so I can have reflective surfaces on water. Am I coming off this whole episode sounding kind of bitter about this whole thing? Yes, I am. Because I spent $500 on a PS5. I never got a PS4 Pro. I never did. I had a vanilla PS4 all the way until the very end. And I played through all of Ghost of Tsushima and loved it, right? It was wowed, even wowed then by the graphics there. I got a PS5. I spent $500 on a PlayStation 5 to basically play PS4 Pro or Pro versions of what are PS4 games or barely better than what was offered on that console. In fact, there were multiple times it was more beneficial for me to play the PS4 version. I made the huge mistake in Elden Ring of downloading the PS5 version when the best version of Elden Ring currently
Really?
is the PS4 version running on a PS5.
Really?
Yes. It's
Huh.
also the same for true for Call of Duty. They tend to run better on PS4 versions on PS5.
It's more stable, I bet.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's more stable. Things don't chug as much.
I, as a closing thought, I would say that, unless the PS5 Pro absolutely bombs, and I don't think it's going to absolutely bomb, but unless it absolutely horrendously bombs,
I'm going to be
Sony's not
very
going to. Yeah, Sony's not going to learn any lesson from this.
I think if the only lesson they'll even take away from this is that like they charge too much and they should have just waited on it. Which isn't the terrible lesson, but it also again for decades, $599 has been a meme.
Yeah.
We're now at $700. With the exchange rate in Japan, it's actually over 800 for just the system no disk drive. And people in Japan are like, "Oh no, you don't understand. With the cost of living plus inflation, this thing is over $1,000 for Japan."
I don't I don't I don't see Sony learning any hard lessons here yet. I think that they're going to have like a serious bomb. I think the thing that happened to Microsoft, where Microsoft really tripped up and, they started realizing like we need to buy first party, we need to start like funding games and
Mhm.
having games on. I think something similar to that needs to happen at Sony. Yes, they have great games, but they don't have any middle games. They only have tentpole. Astrobot, I'm hoping is a good,
Double
shot.
A.
It's a shot in the arm where they're like, oh, there's a whole market for just this double A 15 to 20-hour game. Doesn't have to be, Oscar bait. You know, I
Yeah.
liked The Last of Us 2. I'm one of the few that really liked it, apparently.
A lot more people like that game than will just say it
Yeah.
online, honestly.
Because they don't want the harassment, I guess. My point is like I don't need every game to be that.
Right.
I don't need every game. I loved
I
Ghost
don't
of
want
Tsushima.
I
Right,
don't want every game to be that. I have my Ghost. Great. Do I want to play every open world game that Sony shits out? No.
right. And until they learn the lesson that like there's other games to be made, I think that there's going to be a weird dearth of middle ground games.
Maybe Astrobot is that.
I'm hoping.
And honestly, you know what the funniest thing, Andrew, is? The funniest thing about this, that middle ground game, that's what Nintendo has just been thriving on the last
Well, that's what
2 year plus. It's just
I
like this is just all we do. Occasionally, we fart out a giant Zelda game. You
they
know,
might be the only people that understand the gaming market currently. It's what is most apparent by this PS5 Pro and Concord mixed together, and their shock at Astrobot doing so well, and being so well received. Rather, it is clear that Nintendo is the only person in the game that sort of understands the market.
yeah. Do you know how much Super Mario Party Jamboree is going to sell next month?
Oh yeah, no, they're gonna
They're
make.
going to sell like 10 million copies off of this game that probably had less budget and less staff than Astrobot.
Yeah,
What is it? What is it? It's just Mario Party with a ton of characters and a ton of boards, just giving people what they finally wanted.
yeah,
You know,
it's
we're
gonna be a
finally been
great
asking.
time. Well, it's not gonna be a great time for you because you're gonna be playing with Steve, and you guys get so salty. But it's gonna be a great time for me, a person who does not play with Steve and gets salty. But all right, to wrap up the episode, because we've recorded the intro to this like 4 or 5 times, trying to keep it clean. All my artwork has fallen down. I'm just gonna call it out. There's two survivors. The museum putty is holding up two survivors. It's Raphael, which is off screen, and that's Pyramid Head behind me. So yeah, I didn't just have one piece of art in some sort of statement piece. It's everything else is on the floor. But on that note, speaking of on the floor with PS5 Pro, we have patrons to thank. If you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Dude of the week was Nairus. Thank you, Nairus. And our producers are Dragon Wolf Makoto, Osnight, Zybernite, Scrunami, Croy35, Hyper Viper 89, Hockey Kong 64, LCL Mayhem, and Ziggy Z. Thank you, dudes. We will catch you next time.
Later, dudes.